Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to chat with you guys a little bit about what I consider to be not only the most important basic exercises, but exercises that they and their variations can actually take you all the way up to being an advanced lifter and actually getting quite impressive numbers without really deviating from them. And again, I'm not saying there can't be benefits to adding some other things, because there absolutely can be. But the three movements that I think, and again, they're close variations, that I think can build complete lower body strength and development for most people would be the box squat, the sumo deadlift, and the good morning. And there's reasons I have made tutorials on these three videos. I have detailed tutorials on these, how to perform them, how to set them up. And the reason I do that is because this really kind of gives you the foundation for building size, strength, and athleticism in the lower body. Okay, and there's a synergy between these lifts. And the specific synergies have to do with the fact that they all kind of feed into each other. They all make you better at each other, and between the three of them, they actually will completely develop your entire lower body. Okay, and lower body, we even mean the spinal erectors. The box squat being kind of the first. Like, I consider the box squat to be really the cornerstone exercise for my own training these days, for that of my clients, everyone else. We perform lots of box squats. A lot of my more advanced guys, it's mostly speed boxes, and then we max on box squat variations mostly for max days. But the reason for the box squat has to do with the many things I've discussed before. The ability to create additional mobility, right? The ability to create additional mobility by learning to squat with a wider stance with it, which does give you superior lower body development, right? Wider stance involves more muscles, particularly more of the hips and posterior chain, without detracting from the quads. Okay, that's a misconception that the wider stance uses less quad. That's simply not true. The research shows that it's not true. And therefore, anyone making that statement is essentially speaking from a place of ignorance. But the box squat has the highest rate of force production of any squat. It's extremely safe to perform, and because of the nature of the exercise, it's slightly easier to recover from than normal squatting, along with the fact that we can consistently control and program our exact ranges of motion. Because when we're dealing with a normal back squat, range of motion can at times be ambiguous, and even among elite lifters. Right? That is, the heavier we get, the higher we tend to squat, no matter how strong and experienced we are. With the back squat, we removed that, and the back squat gives us a lot of control over the exact height, particularly if you do like what I do with these 1-inch pads. I can control and modify my range of motion based upon my specific needs or what I want to do at the moment. And it's the same for anyone out there. You have perfect control of the range of motion. It teaches you to learn to have better force production, to be more explosive. It's the easiest way to also learn how to squat with a wider stance, right? It helps you build the mobility to do that. And that wide stance, number one, allows us to eventually lift the most weight possible. Okay, and I want that to be clear. If you build it up over time, everyone out there should be able to squat at least slightly more with a really wide stance versus a narrow. Over time, of course. But it allows you to build that up. It also, because of the nature of it, directly contributes to increasing your sumo deadlift. It will largely build your sumo deadlift. All right, it will largely build the sumo deadlift. And again, in addition to the fact that it's the easiest on the knees, it creates the least shear on the knee. It's the easiest to recover from, therefore we can train with higher volumes on it. And it, again, teaches you to be explosive, to have control, better wide stance. So all in all, it's better for athleticism. Okay, up next being the sumo deadlift. Well, the sumo deadlift will be fed largely by the box squat. The box squat will build your sumo deadlift. And when sumo deadlifts, I'm talking about everything from normal training up to max effort work to speed work, all of these things. The sumo deadlift, again, involves more lower body musculature than the conventional deadlift. It also teaches you to use a wider stance, which again can improve overall athleticism. Also, let's come back over to that other point. It has the least shear on the lumbar. Therefore, we can recover from it much quicker. It's easier to recover from. And if we can recover easier, we can do higher training volumes. You guys are probably seeing a theme here at this point. Again, higher training volumes, more muscle involvement in the lower body. Then we have the good morning. So why the good morning? A lot of it has to do with the exact same ideas. The good morning, relative to most other hip hinges, including the Romanian deadlift, is easier to recover from. Puts less total compressive force on the spine, even though we work all the muscles of the spine just as much as other hip hinges, if not more. Right? It allows for complete activation of all the same muscles we would get on something like a Romanian deadlift, but oftentimes with 50 to 60% of the weight for the same amount of muscle activation. Well, we recover easier. We're loaded less at the top. And a lot of people say, well, don't we want loading at the top? Well, to some extent, but we're going to get that. If you're able to do higher volumes of squatting and deadlifting because they're easier to recover from because we're using the box squat and the sumo deadlift, we're getting all the axial loading we could really want. We don't need it from our other hip hinge here. And the good morning, again, allows for very high rep training, very high volumes of training. Again, more so than a lot of other hip hinge movements. That means we can train more, recover faster, do more of it. Again, stimulus to fatigue ratio. The good morning is also easily executable with a variety of equipment. We can do a lot of variations of it. It's very easy to do things with it, like use bands, different bars, so that we can change the strength curves to fine-tune it to our exact needs. But even in its standard format, doing very, very high rep good mornings, even for more novice lifters, as a supplement to your box squats and sumo deadlifts, will build your hamstrings up further. It will build your spinal erectors up tremendously. It will build your erectors up tremendously. It will bridge the gap of whatever you're losing potentially on the sumo deadlift versus the conventional, because again, maybe less back work. And again, it will build up all the weak links to these lifts. And you'll find that there's a number of elite coaches and elite lifters out there who feel that the good morning is the best accessory for the squat and the deadlift. Everyone, generally from Louis Simmons, tends to hold that view all the way up to Ben Pollock. Ben Pollock actually has written that. I've seen him write that in an article. It's his opinion. It is the #1 accessory. So what it does is that it ties these other two lifts back in together. We're bringing up all the possible weak points for them, strengthening the back, strengthening the hamstrings, because those two tend to be, again, somewhat quad dominant. Not saying hamstrings not involved quite a bit, but they are. A lot of quad, a lot of hip. The good morning bridges the gap, builds all the additional support musculature that we need for them. And again, helps build up the erectors. All right, so when we fit these three together, what do we get? We end up with three very synergistic movements, right? Three very synergistic movements that when combined allow for very high training volumes relative to the fatigue that they generate. So we're able to train a lot using these. And in fact, so much so that we could actually build high volume lower body workouts out of nothing but these three exercises and do tons of volume. And if you program it correctly, you can recover from it. It will absolutely massively develop your quads, hips, hamstrings, glutes, erectors, all these muscles that you want. This combination will teach you to be strong through a variety of stances, because people forget that. And again, as you hear Louis Simmons say that a lot, you'll hear Matt Winning say that. Both experts in their craft. That wide carries over to narrow, but narrow doesn't always carry over to wide. Sometimes they say it doesn't carry over at all. I say it doesn't carry over as much. I think it does carry over. But because it's mostly wide, what do we get? We get the ability to train both. And if you get really, really good at these, what happens? You find that you can go over and conventional deadlift anytime that you want. You find that you can back squat anytime that you want. So there's a synergy between these lifts, but they develop the movement patterns and the musculature to do the other lifts that you might want to do. Okay, these are your builders. These three exercises are your builders. So that if you want a really strong back squat or a really strong conventional deadlift, 90% of your work to build them can be done off of these. It's the whole concept of builders versus testers. In this case, these three will absolutely develop size, strength, and athleticism. And they should be the basis of your training, so much so that, again, a lot of novice lifters could focus entirely on these three and build a tremendous base, at least for the lower half of their body. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.